Hello, I'm Philip. I'm so happy to welcome you to one of the virtual events of Berlin's 21st International Literature Festival and its section for international children's and youth literature. Now, a really important note right in the beginning. I hope you all have some painting tools ready, paper and pencil. You don't need this right now, but you might want to join us painting and drawing in a little while. So feel free to get it now or anytime in the next minutes. As you might know or guess from its name, each year the festival invites international authors and illustrators from many different countries to talk about their work. And this year, there is a special spotlight on what I find is a very exciting country, on Canada. All of the festival's spotlight events with Canadian authors take place as part of Canada's Guest of Honor program at the Frankfurter Buchmesse 2020 and 2021, including the conversation with today's guest. And you see her and me in small framed thumbnails. And there could maybe not be a more suitable forum to talk to her. She was born in a city called Calgary, right at the feet of Canada's Rocky Mountains. Her picture book debut, The Outlaw, which came out in 2018, is about a shadowy man at a frightened small town of the Wild West. She's also the creator of The Ranger, which was published in 2019, a book in which Ranger Annie encounters a mysterious fox. That book was included in the 2019 Best Children's Book list of the Kirkus Reviews, so it's my great pleasure to speak with an illustrator and picture book maker who the New York Times affectionately labeled bewitching. Welcome, Nancy Vo.
Hello. Thank you, Philip. That was a very nice introduction.
You're welcome. We're so happy to have you with us digitally at the festival. Our viewers, just to give you a few little things about what we're going to do with you and for you, what we're going to talk about, you can look forward to a real hands-on event, I would say, about how illustration works, about the stories of picture books, and there will be a live drawing. So that's something to really be excited about and look forward to. Before we dive deeper into your work, Nancy, I want to ask you a little bit about that place you're from, because we have that spotlight on Canada. And maybe before you answer my first question, I want to invite our audience, our viewers, to think about the same and see if all of your answers match Nancy's. So my question is very simple. What are the three words that immediately come to your minds when you think about Canada? And I brought my little egg timer to give you a little bit of time to think about it.
Okay. Mountains, big sky, snow.
Nice. Okay. I hope you all also came up with some answers. So these were mountains, big sky, snow. So that's all nature related. So maybe you can tell us a little bit about these words.
Yeah. So I grew up, I'm in Vancouver right now, which is right next to the ocean. But before that, I lived on the east side of the Rocky Mountains. So growing up, we'd walk to school and there'd be snow banks, lots of wind. And one thing I realized I missed when I moved out to Vancouver is big sky. You could always see the sky. And even on a cold day, that sense of you being not so big in the world was always present. So, you mentioned that the nature is in all three of the words. And I think the same goes for my stories. For me to get into drawing or even thinking about the stories, I like to know the setting. So, you know what? Before I go into showing the stories, I'm going to show you how or where Annie started from. So I'm going to read from The Ranger at some point, but I just want to show you a map here. Can you guys see this?
Oh, yeah. Perfect. Yes.
Okay. So most of you will recognize the shape of that as the USA, but this was the USA in the 1860s, and that's sort of where the story is set. And that little beige, let's see, move my finger across that beige
There
box.
it is, yes.
Is the
Yeah.
setting where Annie's story takes place. So both stories, the outlaw and the ranger, take place in what they call the Wild West. So that's kind of, I would say, anywhere between the 1830s to the 1870s, roughly. And
So that's
just for context,
150 years ago, right? So it's a long time ago, right?
It's a long time ago, yes. And for fun, I wanted to pull up an image of where this is taking place. This is Berlin. Can you guys see Berlin? You might recognize where
right.
that is.
It's hard.
You
to
have a background in
see, actually.
architecture.
There's a church. I might want to say it's near Alexanderplatz, but I'm not sure. It's probably Marienkirche in the back.
You might be right. So this is 1880 version, and this is the Google Map version from 2018.
Yes. That is Alexanderplatz.
So you can see that there's some changes. Yeah. And so in North America, the changes were slightly different because when I was looking through the images of Europe, the buildings are already built of stone or masonry. And back then, when Canada was formed, you have to imagine vast forests and people just starting out. So you have buildings that are more like this. They're wooden. There's horses, and this is right on Water Street where
that's
where I live right now in Vancouver. Yeah. And that's what it looks like right now. Whoops. Let's see. I'm gonna get used to this. Oops, wrong way. Okay, so you can see the buildings change completely. And the reason is the first image I showed you, that was the year Vancouver became a city. And that same summer, the entire town burned down. There was a fire in the area where they cleared trees. And so all of those buildings disappeared. And they had to rebuild again. And that happened to a lot of North American cities. You hear about the San Francisco fire or other fires in towns that started out with wooden buildings. So, I kind of started that a little bit out of order, but thought it'd be interesting to talk about.
That's good. No, thank you very much. And I think you brought a lot of more materials for us to kind of see a little bit more about what the place was like in the time when your books are set, the two stories. And I would say maybe we'll get to the reading so everyone gets a feeling for the story. The Ranger is your second book, your second picture book. It was originally published with Groundwood Books in 2019. And it was also translated into German by Richard Rosenstein and came out in 2020 with Verlag Freies Geistesleben titled Ranger. So the article is actually not there anymore. As I was reading The Ranger, I got the feeling that you really like to twist and turn things a little bit in a way and play with our expectations. So The Ranger is about a female ranger, Annie. It's really a story about friendship. And it somehow blurs the line between humans and animals. So do you like to fool people or why do you play with our expectations a little bit?
Oh, I don't know if I thought about that one too much. I think I wanted the ranger to be a girl, and that was sort of a surprise because in a lot of Westerns, it's very male-centric traditionally. So the outlaw was about a man and a boy, and this one was kind of loosely inspired by, I don't know if you know the story True Grit by Charles Portis. The main character is Maddie Ross, and she's such a fiercely strong female character. And then there's also, I'll pull them out for you. Okay, so this is the book, True Grit. It became a movie. And then also Six Gun Snow White. So this is kind of my reading material.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I think that's as far as the twist goes.
Right, I see. Okay. I'm
Yeah.
sure you already started to talk about this. I'm sure that some of our viewers are wondering a bit more about the time, maybe, and also how you work on a book like this. And I think you brought more materials to show everyone a little bit more about your work process. You already showed us pictures, so you can go ahead. I think you still have like a magic box somewhere and to where you can pull out some things.
Yeah, okay. So I'll start by talking about how I got into picture books because, like you, I have a background in architecture. So my day job is actually not making picture books. I do something called facility planning, which means I just put together the numbers and the descriptions so that the architects can go in and make a very pretty building or a very functional building. Yeah. So I got into picture books in, I would say, nearly 10 years ago. And I had a colicky child. So she basically cried, I would say 10 times in the course of a day. And my way of coping was just to think, she probably has a different way of seeing the world. So I made this little picture book, and it was parked, but it was kind of my first way in because I really liked doing it. And I decided to seriously start taking courses. So I signed up for a course in the US. It was in Washington. And I was very lucky because I had Sophie Blackall as faculty and also Mac Barnett. And then I'll show you kind of the book that really did it for me. Like even before I went to this conference, I found this book. I don't know if any of you know it. It's called I Want My Hat Back. And I know it's been translated into German.
That's right. And it's also an author who comes from Canada, actually, John Clason.
Yeah. So after that one, I thought, okay, this is something really exciting because picture books have this magical thing where you have pictures and words, and they play together in a very neat way that I can't think of any other medium that does the same thing. So I found some other picture books that kind of joined the club. And these, I'm going to just show them to you as favorites. So this is Duck, Death, and Tulip by Wolf Earlbruck. Brief Thief, and I might get the name pronunciation wrong, but it's Michael Escoffier, Christy Giacomo. And this is Sophie Blackall, her drawing of Mother Goose, or Spinster Goose, as written by, I think it's Lisa Wheeler. And this is another favorite. He also defies categorization. Shantan, Tales from Outer Suburbia. So, so I realized, like, wow, there's a wealth of great books out there, picture books. And so I started, after I took the course, Mac Barnett said, don't try to think about what kind of picture books are in the marketplace. Think about the stories that matter to you, and even go back as far as when you were a kid, what really excited you. So I was like, okay, well, right now I'm reading Sisters Brothers. So that's another Western. I start to see there's a theme coming through in my reading and my movie viewing. So I went home, and also Sophie Blackall in our illustrator class, she said, draw some shadows and then pass that picture over to the person next to you and they draw something. So you draw whatever the person next to you has given you, and then the person next to you has drawn on your shadow. So I went home and I did this. So if you're familiar with the first book, The Outlaw, that became a spread. But I kind of did everything backwards when I did my first picture book, because as I learned by the time I did The Ranger, you don't start with a picture and then try and write a story around it, but that's exactly what I did. And I sent it in to Groundwood Books, and I didn't hear from them for months. And I thought, oh well, okay, that was nice. I wanted to get this out there. Let's try somewhere else. But then I heard back from the publisher, Sheila Berry. So the late Sheila Berry, and she was amazing. She represented for me everything I thought was important about picture books. And she says, there are stories out there that need to be told. It might not be the most marketable, but someone out there will want to read that story. So I thought, yes, I found my perfect publisher. And so The Outlaw was published.
Nice.
And she was very excited about going on with the second one. So I tried to do that one properly. So I'm going to show you the proper steps for making a picture book. So the proper steps. The first thing you do is you write something called a manuscript. And all that means is words. So you can see all the editing marks. That's after you go to all your friends in your writing group and they give you feedback. And they might not have the answer, but you'll start to be able to focus on the parts that aren't working. And then when that's ready, the publisher even takes a run at it, and then you'll get kind of a clean copy. So when the words are working, you start with something called thumbnails. So kind of like how you see our faces on the screen. You do these little drawings like that. So this is the Ranger. And you show that to the publisher before you send them a complete book.
Right. So that's mainly for, it's like a summary of your ideas for the images, right? It's like you would draw these to get an idea of how the pictures in the picture book would, narrate a story.
Yeah. And there's even another step that I kind of do, which is I'll just lay out the text as a separate, I'll draw the same boxes again, and I'll put the text in because I want to see how the text flows. And then the pictures, it's the same idea. You're looking at the composition. Is the story moving left to right? Have you varied the compositions enough? Is there enough dark versus light? So so those are kind of things that they can also respond to.
Yeah, I have two questions about the thumbnails. Well, first, just generally with painting and drawing, if you're an architect, you're not only building buildings, you also have to be able to draw, to make plans. Are you, does that help? Like, does every architect, is every architect a good picture book maker, would you say?
Oh, I don't know. That's a good question. I know a couple of them. My mentor, Jen Mann, was also an architect. So, yeah.
So as an architect, when you become an architect, you would also learn to, in a way, paint or draw, but it's very different things than you do in a picture book, right? Yeah.
I think you think about space. But you're right, like a number of things are coming together at once.
Right.
You can't just leave one thing and then not remember something else.
And for on creating the thumbnails, I actually read, you once said something about thumbnails, and it was something very interesting about children as painters. You said that you envy them for their fearlessness when painting or drawing.
Yeah, I still do. Because even though I've done...
Did you become frightened, or what happened?
Oh, I think it's something all people in the creative field go through, because it's not a right or wrong answer, but there's always something better. And so there's always a certain amount of self-doubt that plagues the process. And because a lot of us work on our own, you go for a long time without feedback. So right. The fearlessness, I think, when children draw, they're not thinking about like, oh, what will the publisher think? What will someone else think? They're drawing for sheer joy, and yeah.
All right. Do you have more on how the book becomes the book?
Yeah. So
right?
now we're done the thumbnails. And so the publisher gets to see those as well. And they'll say, maybe, change the camera angle, or maybe you don't need this spread, maybe move this piece over. So then you start to do something called a black and white mock-up. So basically you're starting to think about the size of the finished material. So this is my rough. You can see it's like just basically paper that I've glued together, and it's all in black and white, but you start to get you can see that page changed quite a bit at some point. But the black and white version, and there'll be feedback on that from the publisher as well, because then they've had a chance to see not just little tiny pictures, they're seeing what it might actually look like as a book. So that's called the dummy. And then you get to go into illustrating. So I think I showed you some of the images that helps provide the setting, but I also had to figure out how to draw foxes. So I'm going to show you the first fox I drew. And then this is the second one. And this is probably the one that's closest to what you see in the book. And I don't know if you noticed the evolution, but the first one is very, very finicky because I'm not confident. I'm completely like, I don't know. How do you draw fox? So you start drawing every little hair. But part of what I think I'm trying to learn right now is to say more with less. And so with watercolor, you kind of get that chance because there's a certain amount you can't control. I think architects are a little bit kind of control freaks, if I can speak for the profession. And then there were some drawings that seemed like they should be simple, but watercolor, they would misbehave, and I would end up redoing an image maybe up to 10 times. And so finally I figured out a shortcut for myself. I start drawing the hardest part first instead of waiting for last. So that was an image I took a picture of it. Like, it's like, okay, if you're going to mess up the hands and face, don't save it for the last. Because that's an entire drawing you're throwing away. So start with this. If it doesn't work out, get a brand new piece of paper and start again. So little tricks along the way. And then I don't know if you'll notice in the picture book, but I start to transfer some of the things I did in my research. Let's see if I can find it for you. Yeah, so there'll be images of advertisements or pictures of traps. So that gets transferred, like the text from here gets transferred in. So part of the research goes into the book as well. And also starting to think about the color palette. So there's only 4 colors I'm really working with, and it makes it easier for me. Yeah.
So in both books, I think both books you used watercolor, but as you indicated, there are a lot of different other things in your pictures, like certain materials, newspaper clippings. Why is that? Why do you use not only color?
I think I used to do that when I was a student in architecture school. We used to transfer so we were the group of students that went through. It was in between doing lecture set and people going straight to computer. So we had to transfer our text onto our drawings, and that's how I learned that technique.
So Nancy, in your books, you're not just using watercolor. There are also a lot of other things, different things in your pictures, like I think sometimes wood. I saw a lot of letters, I think, from newspapers. So maybe you can tell us a little bit about what is it, what that is about. Why is that? Why do you do that?
Okay. So when I transfer the text over, it's usually from the research material I've used during the making of the learning about the story. And so I'll pull out advertisements from that time period or newspapers, because there's a lot of background material that doesn't need to go into the picture book, but it's kind of nice to have it as, if nothing else, like texture. Like, there'll be a newspaper clipping, or there'll be an advertisement about traps. And then even fabrics. I can't find the fabric right now, but and then at some point I have to figure out a color palette. So you can see the color palette there. And then I'm pretty much ready to start making some test drawings. So yeah.
Lovely. So now that we know a little bit about the background, we would love to see how you paint. And you offered us to give a painting demonstration of one of the characters in The Ranger.
Yeah. So I'm going to try, and I haven't painted in a while, I have to confess. So if this comes off all badly, we may have to do another take. Okay, so I'm going to draw the fox. So I'm going to move over here, and I'm just going to go over and turn the computer around. You guys see the drawing surface? Yes. Okay.
Yeah, perfect.
So to make it go just a little bit faster, I've kind of done the sketch of the fox already, and you can see it here. And when I'm working, I'm usually, I have my 4 colors that you saw on a piece of paper, and it's just on a pan. I'm going to just start working on the fox right now. So 2 things of water, move that out of the way, because I don't want to dip my paintbrush into the tea. That's happened before. So, I'm not sure if you can see this. I'll move this up a little higher. I'm going to get the light on here. No, that's not going to work. Okay. So what I'm doing is I'm just wetting the area that I'm going to put the paint in. You can't see anything now, but this helps with the water. Watercolor all being the same density. That's the red, a little bit of the brown. So right now I can push the color around a bit. And I usually have to do this over several layers. But with this one, because there's an effect I do with the salt, I can only do it in one shot. So I have to get it right the first time. And I know that I'm making this side darker because the light is coming from the left. So I try to plan and think, okay, where is my lighting? And then
so it's like you really put down some color and you push it around on the page, right? In the water.
Yeah, it's pushed around on the page. And then this is going to take a while to dry. It's because it's old school. So we're going to do another drawing exercise while this happens. And it's kind of a fun one for the kids. So what I'm doing here is I'm putting salt onto the watercolor. And what that does is it starts to suck up some of the paint and then get to really interesting pattern that you can't control or not control entirely. So we're just I'm gonna do one more thing before I leave it. I'm gonna put in his feet or her feet. What I'm doing here is I'm just mixing a darker version of the color that we used on the body. And paint in the nose. And just under the eye, it's quite a bit darker. And then the ears. It took me a long time to get used to this idea that you don't have, you can't control everything about the watercolor. And that's kind of it's a fun thing too, because you get surprised sometimes. And I'll often, when I start on the picture book final spreads, I'll do like maybe 4 at the same time. Like I'll cut out the sheets of paper and start with the same image, but I'll do 4 versions until I find the one I like the most.
Right. That's amazing. Maybe when it dries, I mean, first of all, you use salt here, but do you use other weird ingredients sometimes when you draw?
I don't think so.
So salt is mainly for the effect. Yeah. Sometimes I'll lift color too. Like you see, I'm holding a napkin. That helps me when I have mistakes coming through, or like even here, I should try and get rid of that bit right there. See, it's still. Yeah, I can still lift it. Yeah, and a little bit of gray in the white. So white is never truly white. That's what my art teacher told me. So oftentimes it's a little bit of blue and a little bit of gray. So we're going to try and get that in the tail showing through. And just under here. Oopsie, that wasn't supposed to happen. And so you're not really working with very many colors, as you've already said. You're mixing a little bit as you're drawing, but it's like it's really pretty reduced in the kind of the amount of colors you're using, right?
Yeah. I try to stay within that limited palette, and it seems to work for me.
Right.
So some people say, that's great, you're working a limited palette, but it's also probably because I'm not so great with color theory.
Can you very carefully turn around what you just did so that we can see it the other way?
Yeah, so you can see that way.
There you go. Wow. Amazing. That's amazing. Yeah. And so now you would wait for certain parts to dry.
Yeah, now I wait for it to dry and I'm working on something else. And then as it's drying, I need to, at some point, it's dry enough that I can flatten it. So I'll go over to the top of my bookshelf and pile a bunch of books on top of it. And I need that flatness, because what I'll do after that is, you saw the background is, let me see if I can find you the final spread. It's got a bit of gray in it. So it's like that.
Right.
And I'll mask out the entire fox in something called Riskiert, so that I can just take a big paintbrush and do a gray wash on top of it. So, yeah. But while we're waiting for this to dry, let's draw some crows. And this is always a fun exercise.
That is right. So I actually, this is maybe, well, first of all, it's a figure that keeps reappearing in your books. It's almost like it always takes us into the stories of the ranger and the outlaw, the crows. And I think this is where all of our viewers could get out their painting tools if you want to. And we can all try to paint a crow, while Nancy is more advanced and shows us the many ways there are to paint a crow. And maybe we can get some little advice from you, or like see if we can take something up as we're drawing ourselves.
Yeah, and I don't know if I would say I'm advanced because I'm still learning. When I started picture books, one of the things I did was I looked at the authors that I really liked and tried to learn from them. So I'm going to show you, I'm going to maybe turn this around, some picture books. They're not all picture books, but look at the different authors here. And they all draw quite differently. This one is Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. And Roald Dahl always worked with an illustrator named Quentin Blake. And his drawings are, I'll just show you, they're very loose. They're like this. They're mostly black and white line drawings, maybe with a bit of an ink wash. And there's something quite expressive and engaging about his drawings. I love his drawings. It's not the way I draw, but it's good to learn how other people draw because that's how you kind of figure out how you draw yourself. And this one is Oliver Jeffers, and he draws kind of like this. He's a bit more colorful, but the shapes are also they're his own style. Like he likes to draw legs with just two sticks, but beautiful washes of background. And there's his seagull. So we're going to use that seagull to help us. And then I'm sure this must be translated into German. Don't let the pigeon drive the bus.
Maybe, yeah. I haven't heard about it, to be honest. No, I am not sure, but probably it is.
Yeah. So Mo Williams, very simple, but again, also very expressive in his drawing. Like, look at that. This is crazy penguin.
Lovely.
Who wants to drive the bus. And then Chris Houghton from the UK, he works with, I think, collage. So I had to guess a lot when I was doing this, and it wasn't until afterward I looked up how things are done. But let's try and do one by Quentin Blake. So I'm just going to put this over here. Leave our box there to dry.
Right. So you're taking up ideas a little bit from these illustrators to kind of see the many ways you can kind of find your way on the page to draw a crow, right? That's what I understand.
Oh, yes.
Right. Yeah,
yes.
Nice.
Yeah, so if we're going to do a Quentin Blake crow, I'm just going to look at some of his line work and think, okay, if I were Quentin, I might start with, it looks like just a plain ink pen, so that's what we'll start with. So I've got an ink pen, just looks like this. I'm just going to draw what I think might be his crows. He likes to draw eyes, big eyes, a little tiny dots for people. So maybe his crows, and I have a feeling his line work is just a little bit looser than most. And he might have his crow doing something. So that is one very simple way to draw a crow. You don't need too much. You can just do it in a few minutes with a pen.
Right.
I'm sure there are different versions you can do of this one, but that's one version. Next, we'll say that's in the style of Quentin. Make sure I'm on camera here. Quentin Blake. All right, let's try next one. And we're going to try it in the style of Oliver Jeffers. I'm going to leave this guy over here. So, as you can see, Oliver Jeffers, this is his seagull. So I'm going to use his seagull as a guide for how I might draw a crow. And he doesn't really seem to care too much about feet. He has no feet on his. So we're going to make sure our crow doesn't have feet. I suspect he's using watercolor in his, but we're just going to. It's kind of a simple shape that he's used for the seagull. We're just going to fill that in. What I have is a brush pen. You could use something else, like if you have paint, you can use paint. If you have your crayons, use your crayons. These pens are fun because you can fill in, you can block in lots of color. Let's get a different color here. This one's for the beak. This beak looks like just a straight line. And his feet are just like this. And let's give him something to stand on.
So it doesn't need much sometimes, right? To show people what you want to show them.
Yeah. It could be as simple as that. Maybe
very simple. Very nice.
Yeah. So that one is in the style of Oliver Jeffers. I had a really good drawing teacher, and she made us do 100 drawings in 2 weeks, and we were all looking at each other like, how is that possible? How can we do that?
Right.
But she'd make us do these really quick exercises, and then one of them for me was, okay, maybe I'll just look at picture book artists and figure out how they draw things, and then just pick.
Can you show us the painting again, just in turned upside down, so that we can see it once
okay.
the right way?
Yeah,
very nice.
There it is, the
very
right way.
Nice. Lovely.
And then you've got the crow there.
Right.
So now we're going to try a third version. Let's just do, which one did we get to? Oh, Mo Williams. You know what, Mo Williams, I suspect if he did a crow, it would just look like the pigeon but black. So he starts out with, it looks like just blocks of color. I suspect there's some computer wizardry happening here, because there's no way you can get that kind of a clean look without something like a computer to color it in. But we are going to approximate it with felt pen. Because it's a crow, we're going to make it a bit shorter. So I'm doing a similar thing to what we just did with the crow by Oliver Jeffers. Now look at how he does the feet. How does he do the feet?
Right.
They look like forks. It's like the pigeon is on tippy toes. But you'll notice that what makes it really charming, it's a little detail, but I think it adds so much, is he uses, it almost looks like a crayon to do the outline, a crayon or a charcoal, something that's powdery or waxy. So
it's not
even though this is very clean.
Straight line, right. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And what I notice about all three of these illustrators is that they are not so concerned about making things look super realistic. And it's more about getting the emotion across. So I think they do it quite successfully. And that's why I like their work. Yeah. So now we're going to add a bit of a beak here. And I'm holding this up for you to see. This is, it's Conte. So it's very similar to charcoal, but you can buy this in individual sticks at the art store.
Oh, wow.
Okay, so now we're starting to make this come to life a bit more. And you don't have to follow exactly the solid that you've drawn. And it's actually better if you don't, because that kind of creates a bit of tension for the viewer.
Nice.
When things don't exactly line up.
We can see it. Yeah. Wonderful. So it's
Yeah,
just
then,
a rougher edge, a bit more furry or like feathery.
Yeah. And this is saving the best part for last. His fork feet. I'll make this one the same length. And this. And it looks like he has wings, and we can't draw the wing that color, so we'll just cheat and use white again. And we'll say, in the style of Mo Willems. Okay, there you go. So that is
so cool. Nice.
a crow.
Lovely. That's so cool. Great. So there were 3 ways to draw a crow. I don't know what our viewers did. I'm sure you picked up some things, and I guess the idea is also you learn a lot when you start copying different people who have very different ways and styles of drawing. I also, before we end, really briefly wanted to talk about your first book, The Outlaw, that you've mentioned a few times. The Outlaw was published in 2018 by Groundwood Books. It was also translated by Richard Rosenstein and appeared in German at Verlag Freies Geistesleben in 2020 as Der Outlaw. Can you tell us a little bit just about what that book is about compared to The Rangerin Annie? It's a kind of different story.
Yeah, it is completely different. And it's about, the main character is the outlaw. And I finished reading Sisters Brothers, I think I mentioned. And the main character there, he's done some bad things in life. But towards the end of the book, he's really...
So that's what an outlaw is? Or what is an outlaw?
Yeah, an outlaw. I used to have the definition. But basically, someone who is considered outside of the law is the definition that I found. But basically, they've done some things that people don't agree with, and he's probably gone to jail for some time to as payment for his crimes. But the story is about this man who has done all these things and then has to come to some reckoning with how he fits back into society again. And it's not always easy. So that's sort of the gist of the book.
And that's also kind of set in a Western environment. It's also like the Wild West, which I think you already mentioned. And you also already mentioned that, of course, besides images, there are also words in your book. And in The Outlaw, I realized that there's a really important character in the pictures that we would actually never encounter if we just read the text. There's also often a picture without any words in the middle of your books. It's like when you read it, it's like you're breathing. There's no text. So I wondered how pictures and words play together, and if they always have to say the same or show the same.
Yeah. I think if I think about a picture book, the best picture books leave room for the story to be told either as pictures or either as words or only as pictures alone or only as words alone. So that's the magic. Like if the picture book is just illustrating what the words say, you're not getting anything out of it. So yeah.
So it's important to keep both in mind. So the picture book is really about keeping both in mind and kind of bringing them together, right? The picture and the text, because you don't really you don't really get the whole story, I guess, otherwise.
Yes. Yeah. I think somebody said it to me and it makes the most sense. Is like, if you took away the images or if you took away the text, it doesn't work. Whereas if you just had the text and it still worked, then you don't quite have a picture book or not a very good one. You're just illustrating words. And it's almost like a conversation that the pictures have with the text.
I was curious about one more thing, because I realized that it plays a big part in your books. And you actually, without me even asking, you already kind of mentioned it. It's shadows. What role do shadows play in your books?
Oh, I kind of thought about the shadow from Sophie Blackall's exercise as it makes the reader think about what could possibly be outside the frame of the picture book. So it's not just because we never show the outlaw, we just show the shadow, but that shadow is enough to give you a clue about what might be standing outside.
That's lovely. And also, yeah, exactly. And I think it's really also very important to kind of keep track of the shadows and their forms and kind of what they hint at. At least I had a lot of fun kind of rereading the books and kind of paying a lot of attention to the shadows.
Oh yeah, there's also a shadow in the ranger. It's quite important. And the kids always pick it up, but I don't know if the adults pick it up right away.
Right. I think I did, but it's definitely fun to kind of read them that way. I'm not sure if you wanted to go back to the fox. We have a few minutes left, or if we or at least if you can show us again now that it maybe dried a bit more. I don't know if that makes sense, but you just basically let it dry a bit, right?
I did let it dry, and it's still a bit wet. It's usually an hour's worth of drying. Yeah.
Yeah.
But then I would start to flesh in a bit of the details of the eyes. And then I might go in with some parts with a darker shadow for the leg. And yes, but you get the idea of how I start. I have the sketch in pencil laid out. And then I go in with the watercolor. Yeah.
So cool. Thank you so much, Nancy. That was an amazing tour into history, friendship, shadows, animals, and of course the fascination with stories and pictures. Recently, I saw that you've been working on a very different project, on a book project about a pianist called Ben Gold, who once said that the purpose of art is not the release of adrenaline, but the lifelong construction of a state of wonder. And we're so thrilled that your books invite us to look closer and to do exactly that, to wonder. So thank you very much, Nancy Vo.
Oh, thank you, Philip. You've really done your research.
I tried,
it's been a pleasure.
It was wonderful to have you with us. And I would also like to thank the the Canadian Embassy in Berlin, the Guest of Honor program of the Frankfurter Buchmesse 2020 and 2021, and the Canada Council for their support of this event.
Yes.
And to you, all our viewers, it was so kind of you to spend some time with us today. Please make sure, of course, to check out Nancy Vo's books and also the program of Berlin's 21st International Literature Festival, which you can find online. Thank you for joining us. May you all be well. Goodbye.